Every day is getting harder. These thoughts, they seem to linger. When I'm staring down the barrel with a sense that all this peril could end it all with the pull of a finger, then I feel your presence near as you wipe away my tears. All my fears are apprehended, broken heart begins to mend it. I know I'm better when you're here.
Okay, man. Well, welcome to Got Your Back, man. This has been a passion project of mine for like a couple years now. And over the course of the last 6 months is when I finally decided, like, I'm doing it. It's happening. I started investing in all of this that you see here, and we got the office space, and we've been doing another podcast for like the last 4 weeks now. And I wanted to make sure that like I had I had a few under the belt to feel comfortable enough to dive into something like this, because that one's more comedy based. Yeah. Now it's like we're in the nitty gritty. Not saying that we can't have fun on this one, but this one's obviously a lot more serious. And so, without further ado, guys, my name is Kuya AJ Jeremiah. We have a special guest here. His name is Adam Holman.
That's right.
Adam Holman. Go ahead and just bring your mic up a little closer to you. Man, tell me about yourself, because you have a practice, right? You have a therapy practice that you own yourself and that you run.
That's right. First off, I want to say I am so grateful that you decided to do this and put the effort into this. And
oh, dude.
Yeah, it is incredibly important. And then like what a gift it is for me to be able to be here and come with you along this.
I'm happy. Shout out to our mutual friend Kristen. Is it Kristen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she tagged you in my post. I'm just trying to get people who want to tell their stories and to come up on this show, and she tagged you on it. And then when I looked into who you were, I just kind of took a glance at your Facebook. I was like, oh, this person's the real deal. This person's like been through the ringer, and also like you did your best to change that in a very extreme way, which is like starting your own company.
Yeah, that was just recent. So I've been practicing as a mental health therapist for about 8 years now.
Okay.
And before that, I worked as a hospice social worker for a year. And my path to getting here definitely involved dealing with my own mental health, and really surprisingly so. So I wasn't even aware of the fact that I was struggling. And I had failed 3 straight years of school, not understanding why. And it turned out at the bottom of all of the struggle that I was having was a lot of mental health stuff, a lot of feelings, and a complete lack of recognition that I even had them. And so going through that process taught me so much about myself. It helped me understand some of the ways that the world is struggling, and especially men. And has been just a journey from that one moment of recognizing that I have feelings, all the way to here so many years later,
right,
guiding other people.
That's how. So in your 8 years of doing this, how? I mean, obviously, this is something that like a lot of people don't talk about, and that we're trying to get the word out there. But men's mental health is not talked about. We're kind of just expected, by society to live by this rule of just man up and get over it. Did you find yourself in that role a lot? Because I sure did.
Yeah, seriously, so heavily, and even to the point that when it came to dealing with my mental health, instead of going to someone for help, instead of telling people that I needed help, when I recognized that I had a hard time, I went to the internet instead, right? Like, I didn't feel comfortable talking to someone. I felt so much shame over the fact that I was having a hard time. I had maybe one friend that I called, and it was interesting because he was so loving and gave me so much support. But even after that, I was like, nah, I got to figure this out on my own. Like, I need to deal with it. And like you said, man up. And I was definitely taught that I'm not supposed to be having a hard time with my feelings. So there was a lot of shame around being in that place. And, you know, like, thankfully the internet existed. If I could go back in time and talk to myself back then, I would have said, like, please, man, go get some help so that you don't have to go the long road of figuring this out on your own.
And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I am 32.
32. I'm 33 myself. So I feel like we grew up around, and not that like anything against our parents, but our parents growing up probably didn't speak a lot about mental health and emotional health, because around that time I feel like it was very stigmatized and passed off as just like, why? You know, like, why would you have anything to worry about? We're taking care of you. You're good. You're fine. You know what I mean? And so like, I guess just like growing up in that aspect of things, we really didn't have a grasp on like, man, something's wrong with me. Like, because what could be wrong with us? Right?
Yeah, I think so many of us have heard, you know, like, you had it way better than I had it. And there's a truth to that too, right? To have compassion and empathy for our parents. Like, they dealt with possibly a lot worse than we did. And it almost feels like dealing with your mental health is a luxury from that standpoint. And at the same time, important to acknowledge that the truth of the matter is that we did have mental health struggles, and we did need help dealing with it, and we did need compassion and empathy and support. And I think, you know, just looking at the whole picture of things to recognize, you're right, like, we weren't taught in terms of what we needed. And so for us to be kind of like blind to the fact that we need assistance and to feel shame over the fact that we need it is just kind of like natural and makes sense.
Run me through what your, like, I want to know what your mindset was like when you finally were just wanted to make that change and you just took that leap forward.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because looking back, I definitely knew that I was struggling for a long time, but on a conscious level, just could not acknowledge it. And I was always expected to be doing well, and by all measures, it looked like from the outside that I was. So there wasn't a single person in my life who knew that I was struggling, and I appeared very happy. And that's maybe something to put a pin in and talk about, because I think there is a lot of confusion over people's external experience in terms of what it looks like they're feeling and what they're feeling like internally, as well as like the understanding that people can feel moments of happiness and be really suffering on the inside. So no one knew what was going on with me. By all measures, everyone actually thought that I was doing really well in school, and I was just like hiding it from all people.
Dude, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me.
I would love to hear more about that. Can you tell me?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was pretty much the same way. It's just like I put on, like my brother mentioned it the other day. It's just like, you just hit it really well. You know, like I guess I surrounded myself with a lot of people who loved me, adored me, you know, like would praise me, and I would feed into that, you know, like not really showing that like, hey, like I'm not like passing any classes. You know what I mean? I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not like handling things. I mean, like home life wasn't terrible at the time. There was eventually a point where like it got hard with my parents going through a divorce and like a lot of like stuff happening within that situation. But, you know, you really couldn't tell, because like I didn't talk about that stuff to my friends. We were young. Like our friends didn't want to hear like, you know, all the, what's going, like your parents are going through this. Like being that young, that we wanted to talk about video games and TV shows and all the stuff that made us excited and happy. You know what I mean? So like I definitely like put on a facade that like everything was okay. Everything just wasn't okay. And maybe I just, now that I'm older, I realize like, whoa, I had a lot of issues. And do I wish like I knew, of course, like you wish you knew what was going on and you can handle it. But as young as we were,
yeah, that's right.
There's not really any like, you know, pulling yourself out of that. It just happens. I wish that like, obviously I wish that like, now if I were to have children, I would really like sit down and talk about like mental health. You like, how are you feeling, your emotional health and why it's important, how it affects ourselves and people around us, and all that stuff. And then especially like just for men, like males, I mean, thankfully I've now my circle of friends, my circle of best friends, like we are open to talking about that kind of stuff. You know, Josh here is one of my best friends. And we talk about like, we will talk about that stuff all the time, but like, I think we kind of been through that ringer and like really saw each other at our lowest to be like, dude, like we gotta stop this shit, you know? And there's times where he'll just be like, man, you're messing up, you know? And it would be vice versa at times too. So it's like, we have that relationship, and I think it's important to have that relationship, and not a lot of men do, because we're just so afraid of being looked at as being vulnerable and soft.
It's terrifying, like especially at first when you're not used to that, and you're right, there's kind of like a culture of not talking about it, for which, you know, like you get a little bit close to talking about a feeling and you can sort of feel everyone getting squirmy, including yourself, in a way that's almost like a reinforcing cycle of, you know, you talk about your feelings, you see other people's reactions, you see that they're uncomfortable, and suddenly like everyone's uncomfortable.
You don't want to, you just don't want to be that downer.
To hear about your guys' friendship is really neat, as well as to have kind of like that compassionate honesty between you guys. Like that's just beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've known each other for years, so like we were definitely around the worst parts of like our lives together. But like we also helped each other pull each other out, and now so it's like our friend group, and a lot of like our male friends, like we're not afraid of like talking about that kind of stuff. They've seen me go through the crap, you know. They've seen me go through like terrible breakups. They've seen me spiral out of control and take something so small that like it's just one of those like just let it happen, get over it. But because of the way my brain is wired and the way the chemical imbalances and stuff, it's like something so minuscule turns into something so big and grand in my mind that like I don't know how to handle, because it's just like I physically can. And so, you know, I guess just like having that outlet and having like people to talk to who can listen without saying anything, who can just listen, or they'll say something when you ask for it. Not like, dude, you're a successful therapist, why are you struggling? You're a musician, like you have it all and you perform every day, like why?
It just makes you feel more shame for.
Yeah, it's like, well, what does that matter? I'm a human being, you know what I mean? And like, and not to like, I just feel like you see it a lot. Women have their women. You know, they have the girls they can go to. A lot of them do. Not a lot do. But like most women can just be like, oh, like something happens, and it's like they have an outlet. They got like, you know, parents or cousin or a friend or somebody to talk to. And it's so easy to like have that. Whereas like men, we just bottle up because it's the way that we were just kind of raised by society. Not even raised by our parents, but just by society, to just think that like, hey, whatever you're going through, just get over it. And again, man up. And I'm just like, I'm not about that. That's why I wanted to do this. It's just like, hey, if anybody wants to come on the show and talk about their experiences, you know, either whether it's a male coming on the show and talking about what they've gone through, or how they've had to bottle things up and how they had to get out of it and eventually, you know, hopefully have a good ending to the story. Or even like women who want to come on and tell their experiences of like, you know, because I mean, even on that post that I made about trying to get people to come onto the show, I had a lot of females coming like, hey, I have experiences with like guys, and you know, like that I've helped, or my significant other hasn't learned mental and emotional health, and now we've been together for so many years and we're starting to like learn how to handle these things together. And they're like, that's really cool. Like, I want to know these stories, because I feel like whoever's listening to this is going to relate in some form.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right too, that there's just so much compassion out there that is like wanting to be directed towards men. And then again, there's like a block in terms of a lot of times our ability to receive it due to some of the messages that we've gotten from family or culture or society or what have you.
Also, I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like even showing emotional support, you know, showing sympathy to men publicly is almost kind of frowned upon by a lot of society now, because there's so many violence is, you know, it's everywhere. And men committing those violent crimes against women, you know, and then there's these like movements, the Me Too movement and all these, you know, believe women and, you know, always believe women first and all that stuff, that are almost, now we're kind of taking a step backwards even further for men to be able to talk about this stuff and be sympathized with and be supported emotionally through things that they're going through, because it's just like, hey, well, you know, you're a man, and, you know, generally men do this and that. So like, it's like showing public support to men. A lot of people are starting to do that a lot more, but I still feel like there's that pushback from like a lot of society who just doesn't want to see men succeed, because there's that the rise in like femininity and the rise in like independent women and stuff, which is like, hey, great, all power to you, you know what I mean? But like, why can't we equally together support each other the way you support everybody else? Let's support the men too. Let's give men, like, men are killing themselves every day. Like, I've been in that a lot of us have been in that boat where like today might be the last day, and you're just so ready, like you're ready not to, you don't want to see tomorrow. And like, there are guys who they take that step because they didn't have that backing, or maybe they tried to and it just wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And like, I want it to change. We want it to change.
Yeah, the rates of male suicide are significantly higher than female suicide for exactly the reasons that you're talking about. And while I have a lot of empathy and compassion, especially for women who have been victimized or affected,
Absolutely.
You're right that you can have compassion and empathy for humans and for men as part of that, and hold people accountable for the stuff that they've done, of course, because that's also necessary. But there's really such a strong need to help men understand what they're thinking and feeling, to help them even understand why they're doing some of the things that are hurting other people, because, having worked with people who have been offenders and having talked through with them in terms of what's going on, there's like such a huge disconnect in terms of their own understanding of their belief system and their emotional well-being, and sometimes even their own motives for what caused them to do the thing that they did. And right, I think part of holding accountability is having the compassion and understanding that allows someone to know what they need to know in order to act differently. And yeah, it just breaks my heart, honestly, to think about some of the men that I've worked with in terms of how little they've needed from me just to feel so much better.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I saw something the other day, and I wish I saved it. I wish I would have saved it, but it was like a hug lasting, it was something like more than 10 or 20 seconds, could really change the way somebody is feeling. If you just go up and you just hold them, you give them that real hug. There's like more than 8 seconds or something like that. I'll have to find it. But like, it can really change like those feelings inside, and like those chemical balances just start feeling, it's like that serotonin's through the roof, and it can really change the way somebody's thinking just by showing that, like, that love. And I remember there was a time where it was like I was going through something again, like something so small that I know I could have got through, but the way my depression really like ate that up, I was down at my lowest. And one of my friends, love him to death, Eric Gallagher, shows up to one of my shows. I'm not feeling the greatest. He shows up to one of my shows, and I had opened the door. I was going to go outside and have a smoke, and open the door, and he's walking in, and he's like, hey, my guy, just like one of my best friends as well. And it was one of those things where he like comes up and he just gives me a hug, and he just like, he didn't know what was going on. He gives me a hug, and he held on for like, it was just like 8 seconds, and I just like held on tight, and I broke down. Yeah. Just from the hug. And I broke down, and he was like, oh man, what? Like, no, we're not going inside. Like, let's talk. What's going on? You know what I mean? And like, I got it out, and he like helped me get through that in a way. Like, I told him what was happening, and he talked to me through it. Yeah. And it just, from the hug to that talk, made me feel like a better man and a newer man, instead of sulking. And like, yeah, maybe I did sulk a little bit still afterwards, because of course you're gonna be sad about a breakup or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, the feeling that I had when I showed up to that gig, the feeling that I had after he hugged me, not even knowing that, like, that 5-second hug that he gave me, because we hadn't seen each other in a while, was, to him, was just like, dude, I missed you. To me, it was like, I need this. Yeah. And like, that's why, like, I tell my friends, I love you. I tell my friends I love you before I love you, man. I'll see you later. I give them hugs, because it's like, to me, it's like, it's just, something's going to change about that. Like, it makes, I feel like it makes me feel better. So if it makes me feel better, maybe that person feels better about our relationship too, our friendship, or whatever it is that we have, you know what I mean? So it's like, little things like that can go a long way.
Yeah, I can even just see in you talking about that, how much it meant for you to receive that.
Dude, it's like one of those things that's burned into my mind.
Yeah.
That like when he hugged me that day, I didn't realize that a hug lasting longer than the one of those just like dap it up hugs, you know what I mean, was gonna change everything that I felt. And so that's just, it's important to me, the like little things like that, and doing that for like for men and women. But you know, like men just we don't give hugs like that. We don't like, and I try and change that. Like with my little brothers, I try and tell my little brothers, I love you all the time now. We didn't grow up saying that kind of stuff to each other. Now we say it every day. We walk out the room, I love you. You know what I mean? Like we walk out the house or they're leaving, they're going back to their home. Love you. You know, like we try and make these little changes because we realize that over the years, how much it's impacted our relationships. And so I just feel like generally, like we should just do that a little more, you know, be a little more open.
Yeah, absolutely right. If we want to change the culture of what this looks like on an individual level, we can do that by being that person for the people around us. And I've done the same thing. And again, I'm sort of like seen my friends squirm a little bit at first, but the more that we've done that, you know, like my friends say, I love you back to me, and we hug each other and there's warmth, and like it just feels so great, as well as I feel so much closer to the people in my life. And you're right. I think something you said there just rings very true to me, which is you said that you feel like more of a man for having done that. And I think I can't overstate enough how much strength comes from the ability to actually feel what you're feeling and then continue to exist in the world.
Exactly.
And it's just the opposite of the narrative that we've been given, which, you know, speaking of some of what you've been talking about in terms of like toxic masculinity, right? The way that I think about it is there's definitely some beliefs we've been taught as men that are toxic. We are not toxic as human beings.
Yeah.
Again, I think where we do have some accountability is unlearning and actively doing something to work against some of these beliefs that are hurting us and hurting other people. Again, I think that's most of what I appreciate about what you're doing here. Is I think this is a great venue to talk about how can we continue to exist in the world in a way that's healthier, for which we're happier, for which we feel stronger, for which we're able to be more present for other people, and be loving in a way that benefits everyone. Yeah.
No, it's I'm happy to just do it and have people who are willing to share stories and be on it, like you know. Which I wanted to get a little more into what it is that you do. So you started a company, Main Quest.
Yeah, Main Quest Psychotherapy.
And so what's the story behind Main Quest? Because like we're avid gamers.
All right.
So Main Quest, and we saw the little article, so we were like, we kind of got excited because again we're big gamers. That's how we met, and that's how we bonded. So like tell me about this.
Well, and that's true too. So to go back to what I was saying and sort of like hiding this from everyone, the way that I was really coping with my experience as well as finding some semblance of connection was through playing video games.
Okay.
So all my friends pretty much existed online, and even my real life friends, like I wasn't seeing them in person anymore. I was seeing them in the game world.
Yeah, in game world, yeah.
And that's just such a comfortable way to connect with people because you're bonding over the game.
And you just don't have to leave the comfort of your home.
Yeah, that's
you're just like you're chilling and you're just enjoying it. I mean, which like again, I feel like there is a such thing as being like chronically online, but like you got to get outside and touch grass a little bit sometimes. You know, I think it's just like the getting that sunlight and stuff. It just helps a little bit with like feeling.
Yeah, it's
human.
Touch the grass, look your friends in the eyeballs, and like a little hug now and then.
Yeah,
it's nice. It is nice.
It is nice. So I was at my peak playing video games for 16 hours a day, every day.
Ooh,
16.
Yeah. And when I look back, I was really just trying to not have a single thought, because if I let a thought pop into my brain, I was just like miserable.
Spiraling.
Yeah, suffering so badly. As well as, again, it was like the place where I felt some semblance of connection, sometimes not even to people, like just to like a game community, you know? And of course, end up realizing after getting kicked out of university, like, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, because I'd also been raised to be very critical of myself, right? Like this idea that you're not supposed to have any weakness and you're not supposed to have a hard time. So if I was having a hard time, it just like wasn't acceptable. So for the longest time, if I was struggling, I would ask myself, like, why are you like this, Adam? Like, what is wrong with you? And I got kicked out of university. I was in the car ride home. For once, I didn't like distract myself with the radio or anything, and I was like just letting my thoughts happen. And by some grace that I can't explain, I asked myself, what is the reason that you're having such a hard time? And just like started crying in my car, and hadn't cried for a long time either because I was avoiding my experience of feeling. Yeah. So that in itself was kind of bizarre, and very quickly started unfolding and recognizing that I was just like avoiding this terror of being a failure and being miserable and being seen as weak, and that in the video game world I had friends, I felt connected, I felt like I was like
Success.
Yeah, I was
It
good at
success.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is strange because like people usually take video games as like an escape. You know, like, you use video games as an escape to get away from the real world, and like your escape was also a detriment to like what you were trying to do in school and stuff, and you didn't see that, and then you did eventually.
Yeah, and I didn't see it partially because I was spending so much time playing, right? Like, I'm not kidding you. I like literally didn't have a moment to free think. Like I was distracting myself so badly with the game.
Yeah.
Was it just the same game or like multiples or
I played quite a few games over the years, but mostly League of Legends.
League of Legends?
Yeah, that would be yeah.
You can get sunk in that.
You get sucked right into that thing.
Yeah.
You know, strangely enough, and we'll come back to that too, is like, for me, video games, you know, during like some of like my lowest parts of my life were like, all that was just stirring in my head was just like how crappy I felt over something, anything. Like playing this video game, Rainbow Six Siege, constantly actually kind of like pulled me out of that mindset. I don't know if it was just because like I would get on it and I would just play it religiously and competitively and like and focus on something else that wasn't my feelings, that eventually like I kind of like pulled myself out of like feeling or really being in that dark place, and I was able to like find a little bit of light and eventually be okay again.
It does that really effectively. So, you know, there's a reason I ended up playing them for 16 hours, which is that it does a really good job of relieving some of what I'm feeling.
Yeah,
it's just the issue is that
16 hours is a long time.
Yeah, as well as
when you're in school, especially. Or like
when there were like legitimately things wrong with my life, when I got off the game, those things were still sitting there for me, right? Like they hadn't been resolved. And in general, anything that you use to cope, which coping is helpful if you're using it in short bursts, kind of like you said, like it's really good to use to maybe like elevate your mood a little bit so you can sort of like get back to your life and start doing the things that you need to be doing.
Yeah.
But
I think that's what I did too.
Yeah.
I was able to get to a point where I can like maybe focus on the things I need to focus on.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
not distract myself to the point of distracting like everything, just trying to run away from problems.
But you know, if you end up just sort of coping with your life, you're not living the life that you want to live, and coping becomes sort of like the only way to find relief.
Yeah.
And that's where I was at. And eventually recognizing, and I started off just by, again, like looking on the internet in terms of like what was going on with me and what I needed to do, and ended up going on walks every day to just kind of like have some space to think and think through what was going on, and ended up really understanding myself and what was causing me to feel this way, and came to like the shocking realization that I was incredibly anxious and had been anxious my entire life without knowing it. And that I was sort of coping with my anxiety by avoiding it. And ironically, I was becoming a failure because I was trying to avoid being a failure. And
did you find yourself being a different person online than you were like in real life? Like, were you just like, were the personalities just two completely different personalities, or like are there still like one and the same?
You know, I think they were pretty similar. At that time, I don't think I had any clue who I was as a human.
Gotcha.
And this is the other thing too about feelings, is part of understanding what you actually care about and value involves paying attention to what you feel. So if you don't have access to your feelings, you're missing like a huge chunk of data in terms of like the person that you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, we eventually recognized that my anxiety was coming from a place of really wanting to succeed. And that, you know, like if I listened to that anxiety, like it was calling for me to do something.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, so long story short, in a 5-month period, ended up really figuring out a lot about what was going on with me. Definitely didn't feel completely better and would continue to struggle for a long time. But I felt well enough that I enrolled back in university after being kicked out. I went back and got a 4.0 for the first time in my life, and then ended up carrying that through all the way to
Oh, wow.
graduation. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Going from a 1.7 GPA and graduated high school with like a 2 point something GPA. And to recognize that so much of that was coming from feeling and mental health and having not dealt with it was just shocking to me, and felt really called and driven to helping other people saw what I felt, because gosh, the relief was so immense. And I was
Yeah.
like, if I can deal with this in myself, I think I can give this to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was speaking of like escapes, there was a game that we used to hang out on all the time, called VR Chat. And if you want to talk about a second life and escaping reality, that was one. And a lot of people use that, and still do to this day, use that to escape reality. But I mean, we were in our VR headsets like it was something out of Black Mirror, where we're just in there,
Embarrassing.
just embarrassingly, and like just sweating all day in that thing, just like living this life that we were, like it was you were somebody completely different, and people can like just talk to you without having that anxiety and that social awkwardness that like I definitely had at times too. And
You can be whoever you want.
be whoever you want, literally.
Yeah, and just to your point too, right? Like to socialize comfortably, like you're sort of behind a little bit of protection.
Anonymity, yeah.
Yeah.
When we pulled ourselves out of that too, was definitely, it was like one of the weirdest things, is we were just being so used to being inside this VR headset and communicating with these people all over the world who like, which I mean, like, I'm thankful for us being in that, because we did make a lot of friends through that who actually did. Some of them moved out here in Arizona through like my gaming community. I used to stream professionally for a living.
I got it.
So like, growing my community through that. And then also people who just like came and visited for like a weekend, where I threw like my 24K con, and we had like rented a Airbnb in Glendale, and like 13 people from all over the world came and flew into this little house just to like hang out with each other through my community. And it was really cool to like have something like that. And so like, yeah, I get like the escape was there, but the friendships I built, I'm thankful for. But like when I look back on it, I'm like, man, we spent a lot of time in that, just like avoiding life duties.
For sure.
And at that point, like, and then he started making changes in his life where he's like, man, I don't want to keep like dealing drugs anymore, and I want to do, like.
I can
By
see
the
how
way,
much
like-
I can see how much you love hearing that.
Well, like we talked about it in the other podcast, but like, yeah, and which I want to backtrack. So I said something in one of those podcasts where I said, you dealt the drugs, I did them. He never dealt me the drugs.
No, yeah.
We're in two different states. He was doing his thing and I was doing my
They
thing.
were separate, but
We were kind of like
connected.
aligned, and that's how weirdly how we bonded. And then getting out of that life was also
I
how
don't
we
anymore.
bonded.
I don't anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't anymore. It's straight and narrow. But it's like just getting out of like our lifestyles that we were so used to, that were like destroying us,
Yeah.
and finally like pulling ourselves out of like being like, I don't think we were chronically online, but we were we're on the game like all the time.
I mean, yeah, we were chronically online.
We were pretty much chronically.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah, we have a healthy like amount of it, and I mean like through streaming, so it doesn't really help too streaming. Like,
No,
just
it was
like, yeah,
way too much. Like
It was-
we were always on 24/7, like locked in. Any new thing, all of the social, interactions came from online places. There was not very much the most in-person interaction I would do on a daily basis was like the cashier at 7-Eleven. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
how much? Are you gonna-
Yeah,
That's
and
the thing though, right? Is like legitimately it does meet those needs in a way that satiates us as long as you keep doing it. And I love video games, and I will always love video games.
oh yeah,
You
Yeah.
still play them, like just I guess.
through like after like being through like the whole ringer of like 16 hours online, like how do you cope? How do you deal with that now? Like as far as like being a video game lover and not trying to like fall back into.
Yeah, I stopped playing video games without intending to about 2 years ago. And up until then I was playing them in a pretty balanced way. And when it comes to video game use, right, like I'm just a huge promoter of play video games, enjoy them, and make sure that you have a balanced life outside of
Oh
them.
yeah.
Yeah. And so these days I don't play any simply because there's just like other things that I'm doing and want to do. And there might be a day sometime in the future where there's a game
You have
that
some
interests
time.
me and
You just wanted to give it a go.
yeah. But to what you guys were saying as well, I'm really curious in terms of the time that you guys spent playing games. How do you feel about the time that you spent now when you were in that state of playing almost constantly?
Like I said, I'm happy for the people I've met. I'm not happy about how I spent all that time. Like I wasted a lot of that time because like this year. So to put it in perspective, so I played gigs and shows for a living for years, for over a decade. I think I've been doing it for like 14 years or something like that now. And I was playing 6-7 shows a week. Also at that time, I was utilizing that money that I was making and I was spending it on drugs and alcohol. I found myself kind of like saying, I want to get out of this. I didn't really know what the best way to get out of it was. I just assumed, oh, well, if I have all this money, it's probably, I'm spending on stupid things. Like maybe if I just focus on like being at home all the time. And like, so I was streaming music on Twitch, and I like helped pioneer a lot of like what music is on Twitch now. And so like I started making my switch to streaming video games, and I got partnered on Twitch, and that's like, so that was part of my income. And then I would play like 1 or 2 shows a week.
Got it.
So then I was home all the time, and now I'm home all the time playing video games, streaming, and then when I end the stream, I'm still playing video games because all my friends are all online. And you have like this whole community of people that like my IRL friends don't understand any of it. They're just like, I don't understand what community and what's Twitch and all that stuff. But like being through that for 8 years, it wasn't until this year that I decided the issue wasn't that I was making money and able to spend it. It was that I didn't know how to cope with my own issues.
Yeah.
My mental health. I didn't know how to cope with that. I had gotten therapy last year, counseling. I like went through all that, and I was like trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And it was just like really handling issues that come up and not taking them to like this grand state of like emergency.
Yeah, there's something that I recognized pretty early on, which is that I was never addicted to video games. Video games were the solution that I had found to a problem that I had, and the problem was all of these feelings that I didn't know existed.
Exactly.
And one of the things, too, is if you're feeling something and you don't know you're feeling it, it still affects you. And what happens if you're sort of like blind to your feelings, which there's a name for this, it's called alexithymia, which is having trouble recognizing and noticing your feeling. And it occurs more often in men for some of the reasons that we talked about.
Really? Alexithymia.
Alexithymia, yeah. And so if you don't know that your feelings are pulling on you, they still pull on you, and your life becomes dictated by your feelings. And it's hard to know why you're making the decisions that you're making. And almost everyone comes to the same realization that you did once they're sort of on the other end of it, of like, I was sort of like chasing this thing out of relief for feeling, and that you take away one thing that relieved your feeling, it just like gets replaced with another thing and then another thing until you recognize that at the core of this is like a wall of feeling that is driving my behavior.
Right. Yeah. And that was what I had to figure out. Is it like I made this excuse that like, oh, well, because I was playing all these gigs, I had access to alcohol at all these shows, and then I would get all this money, and then I go spend it. And it's like, come on, like realizing now and being like, come on, AJ. That's not why you went and did all the things you did. Like, we figured that out now. We know why. Now, this year, I was comfortable enough to, like, get back into the zone of being like... Actually, I feel like it was last year. This year, I finally took the step where I was like, you know what? I want to get back to playing 6 or 7 shows a week again. I want to get back to being outside and being out in the social, like... being social again, because like I spend so much time indoors playing video games all the time. Nothing against it, I still do it. Like when I get home, I want to play video games. You know what I mean? Like it's my peace. I love it's.
This is the thing too, is when you're not playing for the purpose of relieving feelings, or even honestly, if you get too deep into doing it for the sake of like chasing positive feelings, that can really affect you too. If you're doing it simply for the sake of enjoying it, you actually get to like enjoy it more purely.
Yeah. No, and that's what I started really enjoying my time playing video games now because I'm just playing because I want to. I'm not playing because I feel like I need to escape anything. And when I feel like I need to handle something, I'm just going to handle it.
That's right.
And that's part of like having like, you know, male figures in my life too, and people that I can talk to, you know, and just getting through that with somebody, not just by myself all the time now, is like, oh, it's really helped.
Yeah.
It's helped a lot. So like, yeah, I'm like this year I took it upon myself to get back to playing 6-7 shows a week. 7's probably a lot, but like I started playing like a lot more again, you know what I mean? And that's when like I realized like, whoa, okay, like I'm not falling back into this pattern and like I'm drinking all the time. As a matter of fact, now like do I have access to all these gigs that can like give me free alcohol at any time? Sure, but I think I have maybe 1 or 2 shots a week. Whereas like I was having 6 or 7 a night and getting plastered and then making stupid decisions because I was feeling some type of way and I needed to drown it out somehow.
Yeah.
And now like I'm drinking less, I'm playing out more, getting social again, I'm getting the sunlight again, you know, but like it's not, and I'm enjoying playing the video games that I'm playing because it's my peace, and it's like something I just want to do. It's not something I feel like I have to do. And that's why starting this podcast was like a big thing too. It's like, okay, if like I'm not spending my money on stupid things like I was before when I was playing all these shows and had access to this money, might as well do something that's meaningful, and I can chase that. And like that's like why I got so excited about doing these couple podcasts and like being able to do it with Josh too, because like now we have like we're getting out of like our comfort zones of doing like what we're used to doing all the time too, and doing something like this and being able to like meet people, speak about these kinds of things, and you know, have fun, have a good time doing it.
Yeah, there's like I'm so grateful for the time that I spent addicted to video games, partially because honestly video games taught me a lot. I have a lot of friends and community too. There's a lot of experiences that I still remember very fondly, just like nights spent gaming with friends. And then it just taught me a lot about addiction and recovery from addiction. And there's just so many lessons spent from the time spent playing. And admittedly, when I think about it, if I sort of like think about myself from a third person view playing video games for 16 hours a day, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but really don't regret it for those reasons. And one of the things that I've recognized is really the key is to build a life for which existing in it feels good.
Yeah.
And then you get to enjoy playing video games for the sake of enjoying them. And just like the act of playing video games that much, and again, oftentimes to relieve yourself from really uncomfortable feelings, and why wouldn't you? Because it works. You know, it's stopping you from building that meaningful life, and then unfortunately that meaningful life is on the other end of a lot of really uncomfortable feelings that you've been sort of running away from for a long time. So it feels really overwhelming when you approach it. And again, this idea that like we're not supposed to even have those feelings to begin with can really be a trap, and to navigate out that involves needing to acknowledge the fact that you're feeling things, that it's uncomfortable, and to really understand what's going on with you.
I read something the other day as well, and I feel like I apply this now to everything, which is success is on the other side of fear.
Yes. Yeah.
And no matter what that success is that you want to look for, there's always something that you're afraid of. And you know, it's the same thing with like mental and emotional health. It's like we're afraid of something. Something's holding us back mentally and emotionally. And until we kind of like take it head on in any way, whether it's by ourselves or whether it's with a group of people who can just really like help you fight those battles and understand those battles and why they're there, that's when you'll really find that success of being like, okay again. And like, again, it's okay to not be okay. But like when you want to chase, like when you want to find that peace, which like my biggest thing, it's just like, I want to feel that peace no matter what. I want that peace, that inner peace, whether it's like in my relationship life or like in my home life or whatever, just my business life. I just want to feel peace. My peace is important to me. And it took a lot of fighting my fears to finally realize where my peace was at.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the name of my practice is somewhat related to that, if you'd like to hear more about that. Yeah. So, again, the name obviously being an homage to video games because I love them, and at the same time was just very apropos, because when I think about the journey that we all need to go on. It is that journey to figure out the path that you're going to walk to end up with a peaceful life. And you're right. I say the similar thing, which is an easy life is on the other end of hard things. And to some degree, too, one of the other things that you experience when you lean into some of those feelings of anxiety is that you can just acknowledge that the feelings are there and continue to live your life in a way that matters to you. And the main quest is sort of like the path to creating a life that matters to you, for which you can experience the full range of emotion and know that it's okay that you're feeling it, because on the other end of those feelings is a life that matters a lot to you.
I always felt like there's nothing more human than feeling anything. I'd rather feel sadness than not feel anything at all.
I'm so with you.
Yeah, and that's where I was at a few years ago, was not feeling anything. And realizing that not feeling anything was getting in the way of like my friendships and my relationships, because then I was acting a certain way towards people, and it was just like this feeling like I don't care what you have to say or what, all this stuff is because it was just like
apathy.
Yeah, it's like I want to feel something. If I can feel something, at least I know I'm alive. I'm like,
right, like when your friend hugged you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what were you feeling then?
I felt at that moment before he hugged me, I was getting to like a place of just like numbness. When he hugged me, it was like he brought out this like part of me that just wanted to like cry and let it out, which like I was like ready to just bawl all over his shoulder. And like I think he like recognized that and was like, oh, let's talk. You know what I mean? Like this hug went on a little longer than I thought it was going to, but I felt your body kind of like sink when I hugged you, you know what I mean? And so it was just like it kind of like pulled me out of like this like part where like I feel like if I didn't get that hug, I might have made some stupid decisions, got like, I might have fallen into drugs and alcohol or something, just from like this, something so small that just was so big in my head and in my heart. And that hug was just like his hand just grabbing at me and be like, come on, dude, you're going to feel something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't even know it. And that's why it's so important to like embrace each other, embrace feelings, and embrace like there's life out there. It is full of feelings, and it's full of emotion, and it's full of like people, like we're all different energies feeling and going through different things. And we can't act like everybody else is some NPC that just doesn't feel anything. You know what I mean? Like somebody's going through something.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's changed the way I've looked at everything, like whether I'm going out to restaurants and, my waiter or waitress is having a bad day and might be, it might show a little bit, like maybe that extra little tip or giving them like, hey, like you're doing great, or just the smile. Even if they choose to not smile through it, like just trying to be nice to somebody can be a game changer to somebody else's day.
Yeah, for sure. Being attentive to other people's feelings too. And that's the thing that's so devastating about not having access to your feelings, is that our feelings are like literally the thing that connects us to other people. We all have different experiences, we all have different beliefs, but we all experience the same feelings. So you don't have access to your feelings, you don't have access to like actual legitimate connection with other people.
Right.
And the other thing that you don't have access to is a sense of meaning and purpose. Like you said, like people aren't NPCs, but when you're sort of in that state of being numb, like you become an NPC.
You become that NPC.
Yeah. Like life is just like happening to you, and you're sort of being gripped and pulled around by these like invisible feelings. Whereas like, again, this idea of the main quest is understanding what matters to you, using your feelings to figure out what matters to you, and then taking on the main quest of like, I'm going to walk towards a life that actually matters. And like, it all requires you to feel all of these feelings that we've been told we're not supposed to have.
So through your practice and through like your years of doing this, do you get a lot of like, it's probably, I don't know if any of this is confidential or classified, but like, do you get a lot of men who just come to you and just like break down in that way?
Oh gosh. So often. I just got chills when you said that. And honestly, like I feel myself tearing up a little bit because of how often someone comes to see me. They've just been tough their whole life. And it's just like a few moments of asking questions just to have like a flood of feelings, and to have someone come out. And I think the other thing that just like, it breaks my heart so badly is just how apologetic people are for something that I'm really admiring in the moment, is how deeply the person is caring about the stuff that they're talking about. And to leave my session after just like 1 hour of literally nothing except for me listening. Yeah, and to have them feel so relieved, it's like, gosh, we need so little.
Yeah.
We need so little.
Is it crazy to see, or like kind of just a weird to see how it's just a small thing, you know, like that could have happened at any point in their life, but it like took you going to like a therapist to see, like, is it kind of a shame that they didn't get that in their personal lives, you know, like no one spent that amount of time to just give them like a small, like an ear to listen to, or, you know, like.
Yeah, I think it really is a shame, and again, like something that we all need to take the mantle of like helping people have that. And some of those little gestures, like telling your friends that you love them, or noticing maybe that they're having a feeling, and poking just like a little bit through the discomfort to get to the other end of that. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a way to really get the word, like obviously you would, like, we all wish there's some sort of solution to like men just understanding like it's okay to just be soft and vulnerable, right? But like what's been your plan of like attack, I guess, to like making sure men feel that way, like, in that it's all right? Because you can't really just be like, hey dude, it's all right, be soft, like, you know, like a lot of times you can, but like then there's like always those macho men who are just like, I'm fine, you know what I mean? Like, how do you get somebody out of that macho mindset?
Yeah, are you asking more sort of like on an individual level, like say you're like talking to a friend?
Yeah, because I feel like I have a lot of people who are like that. They just like reside in this masculinity, which is like, hey, that's fine, man, but like there's gonna be a point, like, come on, man, you can talk to me, you know what I mean? Like, I know not everything is okay. And like,
I'm gonna think about that for a moment.
Yeah, I feel like I wish that there were easier ways to get through to people like that, but again, everybody's different too, so there's not really like a right or wrong answer to mental and emotional health. I guess it's just everybody's different. But that machismo, man, it's hard to get past sometimes.
I think there is actually a pretty good answer to this, right? Because especially if someone's in that machismo state, the more that you try to force them into it, like the more that they kind of
toughen up
and buckle down. Yeah, right. As well as I think there is this sense of, one, you end up in kind of like an ego battle with someone at that point, right? And I think sometimes the best way to get through to someone is to simply be the thing that you're wanting them to be. Right?
I was just thinking this to myself when I was talking in the last 30 seconds. I was sitting here thinking, maybe it's not what you say to somebody, it's how you come off to that person.
Yeah,
that makes them realize, hey, it's okay.
Absolutely, right? So your vulnerability, your choice to feel your feelings and doing so with confidence kind of like proves that there's a path to doing that from which like you can maintain your status as being a manly and confident human being and still have feelings, right? And so, you know, just sort of like existing as I am these days, having really understood myself and felt confident in the fact that I have feelings and like just legitimately care about people so much. I'm like, I'm just going to express it, you know, like if there's someone I say like, you know, I can see that you're really hurting and I feel really sad to see you hurting that way. I just want you to know that I love you and I care about you. And I'm here to listen if ever you want to talk, and to just kind of sit there with your hands open and instead of forcing it, just say like, you know, I'm here. And
when you're ready, you're ready. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. I've definitely been in that mode a couple times, and I realized that the only time that I've ever gotten through to somebody was just when I finally let loose and was just like, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through. And then they're like, yeah, you know, like it's almost like they start like understanding what you're going through their own experiences, and then they start talking about it. The next thing you know, you're just opening up to somebody.
That's right.
I had when I was talking about this podcast a few weeks ago at one of my gigs to one of the regulars. I sat down at the bar and I was just relaxing during my break, and he just wanted to get to know me as a musician. And I told him that one of my dreams was to start this podcast, and that I was getting ready to begin this. And it was just this older guy who was just there to just have dinner. His wife was at home. He was just chilling. He just wanted to have dinner. I guess like she was wanted to do something else, and she already ate. So he we started talking. I talked about men's mental health, and it just kind of opened up like this like floodgate of like him wanting to also speak about his experiences. And man, he was like in tears by the end of like this conversation, right? And just that vulnerability. Like he's like trying to wipe away his tears and trying to not to show he was crying. I'm just like, it's all right, dude. Like you're good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that felt good.
It does feel good.
It felt good. Like, you know, he was apologizing. Like, why are you apologizing? Like, he's like, you know, he's apologizing for crying. I'm like, bro, like, come on.
Yeah, the apology kills me the most because especially the things that people are sad about. Like if you think about what sadness really is, it's I care about this thing so much that the thought of losing it really hurts me. And so in the moment that someone's sad and crying, you can see just how much they care about something.
Yeah.
And it just like really sucks to have someone feel apologetic for the fact that they care so deeply about something.
Don't apologize to me about your feelings.
Yeah, you got it.
You're so valid to feel the way you feel, especially when you're talking to me about something that you've gone through, whether it's loss or just like battling your own depression and anxieties. And you start crying and apologize to me. It's like, listen, I'm here listening because I want to. Do you see me trying to get up and get away from this conversation? No, I want to hear about this. You know, like this is teaching me.
Yeah.
I'm learning and you're learning because like, it's like, not only am I learning about you and that there are more vulnerable men out there, you're also learning that it's okay to be vulnerable, man. Like it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that we have this kind of idea that vulnerability makes you weak because you can kind of think of it visually, right? Which being vulnerable is like having your arms wide open like this and like your internal organs are all like shown to the world, like someone could stab you or something. And
Yeah.
being closed off is like this, right? And it's interesting that we think we're somehow weak if we're able to walk around the world like this and be okay with it, right? Like how much strength does it take to say, hey, like I'm here, I'm open and I'm okay with whatever happens. Like it takes so much strength. And again, there's also a kind of like paradox, which is that, you know, the moment that you start feeling your feelings, you become so much stronger because holding them in is like walking around the world with like a weight vest on.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you just like spend your whole life on hard mode. And by the end of the day, you're so exhausted that just like the ability to actually embrace and feel your feelings and take that weight vest off. Like you have so much energy and
You know
so
what it
much
reminds
life.
me of? I'm sorry. My brain is so like the ADD just went to Dragon Ball Z. When
Yeah, the
Piccolo
hyperbolic time chamber?
Dude, when a Piccolo took off his vest and he all of a sudden was the fastest human being in the world because the whole time nobody realized he was wearing like millions of pounds of weight on him. And it's like the same thing is like if that was emotions and meant like, you know, like all that stuff that just weighs somebody down when they eventually just shed that weight.
Yeah.
They're able to just fly. You know what I mean? Like,
and they do fly. I think that's the other thing that I feel, gosh, I feel so grateful that I get to do what I do because again, sometimes so quickly, just like small amounts of like, oh, hey, I have feelings. Oh, hey, these feelings have been affecting me this whole time. To watch people go from these states of like this huge pit of like, why is life so hard to like, wait a second, like life is a lot less hard than I thought. And to see people just go from that to thriving in such a small time is like phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
Have you seen like success stories like that where they're like, you know, rock bottom and then a few steps and all of a sudden they're just living life, you know, successful?
yeah, so my belief in that came from my own experience because the period of time from which I went from being kicked out to starting university again and ending up with a 4.0 was 5 months. It was 5 months of
Pretty rapid.
dealing with my mental health. Yeah. And so just like a huge believer in people's abilities to become well and
Bounce back, you know.
yeah, just, you know, like so many people I've seen come through my office, come in this state of like despair and life is so heavy to sometimes even like a few sessions to a month being in a standpoint of like, wait a second, life's kind of all right.
Yeah, I kind of like this. Like,
something that I think I can't remember whose podcast this was, but they were saying something like, if you when it comes to life, you got to take it all. It's not just like good. It's not all good. There's gonna be bad. And when you start really loving life, it's when you start really understanding that you can't just love the good parts.
Yeah.
You gotta love the bad parts because they do shape us.
and everybody has them. No one's got them.
Nobody. You gotta. How are you supposed to know what's good if you don't know what's bad? You know what I mean? But you gotta love the bad parts because it's part of life, and life is beautiful. We should, embrace that. And like, a lot of us have it a lot harder than others, but like we can help each other. see some of that beauty.
Yeah, you're really speaking my language. I got chills as you were speaking there because I think some of the most meaningful moments of my life have been some of those moments that are not joyful and not great, including my experience of being so addicted to video games, because it's literally the thing that allows me to do what I'm doing now. And I've come to really appreciate all of the feelings that existed then. And yeah, you can sort of be in this state where if you're not desiring life to be this joyful thing all the time, you can really appreciate some of those feelings. And like, we do this all the time, right? Like, we go and watch sad movies on purpose. So, you know, yeah, you got it. And we appreciate the sadness in that moment, or like play horror games, right? Which, you know, if you're sort of like willing to feel them, it changes the texture of that feeling by the time that it gets to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, wow. It does. That's an interesting way to say that too. It changes the texture of like how you do receive that.
Expecting it, it like feels more like like it feels better, you know, more digestible than if not.
Yeah, sometimes not even expecting it. Like, I'm willing to take on this negative feeling because I know that it's going to get me to where I want to be. Or sometimes, you know, like things happen to you. Like, I think one of the most beautiful feelings to me, one of the ones that like grips me so purely, is grief and loss. And right, like, it's not something you can plan for. It just hits you. And I think I just see the most pure love come from people's choice to embrace the fact that they're feeling so much loss.
Yeah.
You kind of get to appreciate the full context of someone's life in grief. And yeah, if you're willing to sort of like sit with that and appreciate the fact that the pain is coming from really deeply having cared, it still hurts, but it hurts in a way that's meaningful.
Okay. Wow. I feel like I've like come out of this, you know,
emotionally smarter.
Yeah, emotionally a little more intelligent, you know, like, and I love that. I love this. We're an hour in, so I wanted to ask you a couple things actually. So like, I still want to get to know who you are as a person, and obviously like we don't have to do that in one episode. We can do that over the course of time. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is because like you do have this practice and then you know your therapy and stuff. Would coming back on this show be something that you'd be interested in, like in the near future? And maybe if I had like another guest who were to tell their stories, and it's not necessarily like you giving up like your time of like you being a therapist, but maybe just to be that ear to listen and then chime in during.
I would love to come on anytime.
Yeah.
I am so appreciative of what you're doing here. I think it's just so aligned with what you want to see in the world as well as what I want to see in the world. I'd be more than happy to.
No, well, I really appreciate that because I just feel like having somebody who has been in this field for as long as you have, and also just because this is first episode, but first or 100th, just getting to know somebody over that course of time too is important too. And I think that like we have a lot of the same values and share a lot of the same, so that this. I think that would be important and it'd be really cool. And just to have, like, if I were to have somebody else here who are just telling their stories and, like, maybe have, like, that professional. I'm no professional. I'm just somebody who's been through the ringer. And, like.
Let me tell you, that's the thing that makes you a professional. And I went to school. I have learned so much more from my own experience. And then, like, my clients are a damn gift to me. Like, they've taught me so much from the ability to sit with them and their suffering and their experience. So I say that just to say that your expertise comes from
experience.
Having lived as a man in this world and been where you're at now. So
I feel like one of the and I posted this on Twitter the other day, but it's like one of the loneliest things in the world is being a man.
Yeah, geez, it is.
And I learned that years ago, and I hated it. Now I embrace the fact that I know that because I know that I can change that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can help other people change that too, not feel so lonely because they are a man or because they are going through this and that. Like we're gonna hopefully in the near future, this podcast or just talking to each other or anybody else, that we can change a life or two.
AJ, are you doing that right now?
What's that?
Contributing to a world where it's less lonely to be a man.
I'm trying.
You're succeeding. I feel less lonely right now as a result of the ability to have this conversation.
I appreciate that. So let me ask you this. So we'll just go ahead and close it out on you. But like anything that you want to talk about your business, like you can go ahead and just like plug whatever it is that you do, and if people want to go ahead and reach out to you in any way, shape, or form they can, if you have anything that they can reach out to you on.
For sure. If you'd like some therapy, I'm more than happy to hear from people. You can find me. You could just Google Main Quest Psychotherapy if you'd like. That's probably the best way to find me. And then recently, I started an Instagram page that is for the purpose of promoting mental health and being able to talk about mental health. And I'd love to have anyone stop by there too. That's simply Adam Holman, LCSW, and just constantly streaming mental health information every day. So
Heck yeah.
come over and talk.
Put all the information down in the description of this video too. And just want to say one thing, but I got your back, man.
I got your back too.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, everybody, for listening. Josh, production assistant always, and thank you everybody for watching and listening. And I'll talk to you all soon. Much love, everybody. Mwah.
As I feel myself begin to fall, I make myself stand a little more tall, because as long as I feel something, it's a whole lot better than nothing. When I felt like I couldn't feel at all, because I felt your presence near. Then I held your love so dear. All my fears are apprehended. This broken heart begins to mending. I know I'm better when you're here. All my fears are apprehended. This broken heart has seemed to mending. I know I'm better when